Larry, how do you find it right now? We talked about it before, but with the new sort of attitude on the part of the two parties, how do you find it?
Actually, I'm guardedly optimistic. That's probably not a good phrase, but especially not with Donald Trump. But Witkoff and his Omani go between, who I understand it was the guy who owned the palace, or at least his envoy, uh, which is a pretty high go between. Uh, and the foreign minister from Iran, Arachi, at least were able to say that further negotiations are possible. And of course, Arachi raced off to Moscow to consult with his Russian colleagues and friends. And I assume Witkoff is probably rushing back to Israel to assume his other duties, or maybe to Moscow too, or Ukraine, or wherever. This guy seems to be the Secretary of State for the United States. No congressional approval, no deeply steeped in diplomatic affairs, but he nonetheless seems to be the person Trump is going to turn to. It's not unheard of in American history. I think of Edward House, who worked with Woodrow Wilson. I don't think he was ever really corroborated by any of the official process. He just was a very influential uh, person with regard to Wilson. So it's not totally out of the ordinary, but it is kind of strange that the regular cabinet apparatus is not being used. But Witkoff, as we've said several times, and as others have said too, seems to be a mild mannered man who, despite his lack of historical and diplomatic and other credentials, and in this case, really difficult matters loom ahead. That, for example, Moniz, our Secretary of the Energy, and Salehi, I believe, for Salehi for the Iranians, nuclear experts both, had to plow through for the JCPOA. So could be a torturous process for Witkoff unless there is a team waiting somewhere. And I understand that they've been talking with Rafael Grossi, who's the current head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, who has made some comments about the excruciatingly difficult process this is going to be if it does devolve into being mostly conversation about a verification regime and confirmation on both sides of acceptance of that regime. It's going to be terribly wrapped up in details that only a very few will know anything about. And the IAEA will probably be a very influential advisor to both sides.
You've mentioned Witkoff as the Secretary of State. And how about Marco Rubio? Where is him and what is his position in your opinion?
I can't find anything that Marco Rubio is doing of consequence except now and then announcing that he's done this or that to the State Department or to the Foreign Service. Like, for example, he recently announced, I think he's going to cut back on the number of consulates, embassies, and therefore people we have overseas, um, cutting back on the diplomatic instrument for all intents and purposes, which I think is a colossally stupid thing to do. But that's what I understand he's talking about. And he's talking about some other things in terms of downsizing diplomacy at a time when diplomacy is hardly even spoken, hardly even a word you hear in this administration. If you hear anything that even remotely resembles it's diplomacy, you hear the commercial aspects of it, the deal making aspects of it, the business aspects of it, whether it's Russia or Ukraine, Europe, whatever. There doesn't seem to be a real call for diplomacy, not real diplomacy. And people are saying things like, I heard this yesterday all day long, people sending me emails and everything else. How can you do diplomacy if you are shouting from the rooftops that you're going to bomb Iran back to the Stone Ages, just like you're doing the Houthis? One, when you aren't bombing the Houthis back to the Stone Age. In fact, they're standing up to you quite well. Thank you very much. And two, this is a crazy thing to be doing, especially when you've just commissioned and begun negotiations in Oman. Well, I said to one person, look, Frederick the Great said diplomacy without the military is like an orchestra without instruments. He's right. The threats, the military aspect of it does have a place. Now, I admit, and I admitted to this gentleman in an email, that the braggadocio and the the way Trump delivers his threats and the way Hegseth sycophantically backs up those threats is a little sickening and doesn't really do much for diplomacy. I'm sure the Iranians are sick and tired of it. But nonetheless, diplomacy should have an aspect of, I think Churchill called it the veiled sword, or the hammer underneath the velvet. But it seems the United States just wants to wield the hammer with no velvet at all. And that is a problem. That's a significant problem, especially with the nature and the character of Donald Trump.
You've mentioned Pete Hegseth. Larry, if we were before the negotiations happening between Iran and the United States, I could understand what Pete Hegseth was talking about. But here is after the negotiation, the first round of negotiation. Here is what he said.
Direct talks yesterday. They began in the past. It's been indirect talks with a mediator. But there's Steve Witkoff meeting with the foreign minister of Iran. What can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you that President Trump is dead serious on this issue. He's dead serious that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. He's said that for 20 years. He's been consistent. That is clear. He's dead serious that he wants it done at the negotiating table. He wants it done peacefully. Yeah. And that's why he's going straight to these talks. He set that deadline. These were productive talks yesterday. I don't want to get ahead of our skis. Steve Witkoff does a fantastic job, but it was a good step, and they're gonna go at it again on Saturday. But he's also dead serious that if we can't figure this out at the negotiating table, then there are other options, to include my department, to ensure that Iran never has a nuclear bomb. We hope we never get there. We really do, Maria. But what we're doing with the Houthis and what we're doing in the region, we've shown a capability to go far, to go deep, and to go big. And again, we don't want to do that. But if we have to, we will, to prevent the nuclear bomb in Iran's hands.
Does he really need to talk this way, Larry?
No. Far, deep, and big. And the Houthis are extending two middle fingers to him, because they haven't gone far, they haven't gone deep, and they haven't. Well, they may have gone big. I don't know how much ordnance was expended. I hear it was quite a bit. But the Houthis are still there. And I dare say they will be there despite the United States' efforts to destroy them in Saudi Arabia's and the Emirates and a host of other people over time. They'll be there in another 500 years if the Earth is still here. They're not going anywhere. So, yes, you're right. The first time, okay, before the talks in Oman started. Now they've started. Shut your mouth, Pete. Go away. Now it's time for diplomacy. We'll take your little sword out again, and we'll use it if we have to. And I'm not saying I want that, but I'm saying that that's the way you would do it. You don't keep pounding the whole time you're going into the negotiations. You've started the negotiations. Now shut up. It's time to be quiet. The Iranians know full well. What do you think? They're some kind of idiots that they can't understand the many times you said this beforehand? And his words, if you go back and parse the earlier events and everything, the man hasn't got a very big vocabulary. It just smacks of sycophancy. Trump will tell him to shut up, I assume. Although I have to say, this is a president that doesn't seem to know when to shut up either.
Larry, in the case of Yemen, we've learned that it seems that the United States, together with Turkey, that was somehow surprising, UAE, and all of these countries are trying to manage as Iranians call them, Daesh or ISIS, and these forces in Yemen to fight Ansarullah. This is the same strategy that they have tried it before. Why in the world do they feel that this time going to be different?
It won't. You asked me why people keep, including the American empire, keep trying the same strategy over and over again. And it's the same thing as beating your head against the wall and thinking that someday the wall will fall down and you won't lose your brains before it does. I mean, it's just stupid. I continue to emphasize that if this is really what I think Trump wants, and I think it's a verification regime that he can trust, and the Iranians want a verification regime that he can trust so they can get sanctions relief. But that's all in the details. You know, the old expression about the devil's in the details. Well, we know from the JCPOA days, and this one's going to be probably much more rigorous, that the devil is in fact in the details here. You've got to have a program set up, a verification regime to go along with it that's at least 95, 96% of surety. You can't get 100. You simply can't, because you can't be on the ground and destroy everything. That's the only way you get 100% assuredness. And then you don't destroy the software. The software is still there. I had a Sudanese tell me that when we were talking about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, he said, you know, Khartoum really has all the software. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we have all the plans and designs and everything because they smuggled them over here, the Iraqis. And that's probably true. I was also told the same thing about chemical weapons with Bashar al-Assad. Saddam Hussein had handed over many of his chemical weapon stocks to Bashar al-Assad for safekeeping. And I remember saying to the CIA agent who told me that, I bet he doesn't get them back, because Assad would be stupid to give them back to him. But I have no doubt that there was probably some truth to that. So you can't ever destroy anything 100%, like a chemical weapon or a biological weapon or nuclear weapon capability, because the software is always there in somebody's head. But to get really close, you need a pretty rigorous verification regime. And the Iranians will have to believe that they can accept that, and that the parties carrying it out will not just be the U.S. And if there is U.S., it will be real nuclear scientists and not CIA operatives. And if it's someone else, they'll have to be able to trust them, and we'll have to be able to trust them. And the IAEA is a point where we ought to converge in that trust. But the empire has shown that it is very skeptical of the IAEA unless everyone involved is our agent. And we do put agents in the IAEA. And we do from time to time select their leader and make sure he's our man or our woman. These are all details that are going to have to be worked out, and the trust is going to have to be there. At least a modicum of trust is going to have to be there. That can build over time. And that was one of the things that I particularly liked about the JCPOA. It was designed to build trust over time and to make it easier to do the verification, and ultimately to maybe go beyond the 25-year moratorium that was set on it, because both sides would be willing to do so. Sanctions would have been lifted. Iranians would feel good about the deal, and no nuclear weapon would transpire, and we'd be feeling good about the deal and about the verification regime. That's what it's all about. And I just have a problem with Donald Trump having the patience for all that.
You think that he wants to get a deal as soon as possible? And
I think he wants to be able to claim it as soon as possible, say within the year. And maybe that's possible if we do. And here's the other thing. I think Trita was right, Trita Parsi, the other day when he said, you got to talk about primary sanctions relief, not just secondary sanctions relief, but primary sanctions relief. And that should appeal to Trump. Getting American business back into Iran should appeal to Trump. For that matter, other than the Lindsey Grahams and the other, Luddites in the Congress, it should appeal to the Congress too, or at least enough of them to make them more accepting of this deal, given that it's a Republican Congress, a Republican president, and the fact that business is going to be helped by relief of sanctions.
if we assume that after all, the United States and Iran can get along and can cut a deal on the issue of the nuclear program, what is the strategy for the Middle East? We know that Israel has nuclear bombs. We know that they're threatening Palestinians of nuking them. And on the other hand, we have the case of Yemen. They're not backing down. They're just continuing as long as Israel is attacking Gazans and just the blockade that is happening right now as we talk. How, what would they do? Do they have anything? Do you see any sort of sign that they want to do something about that?
Well, let me take the first part of your question there in a broad sense. First of all, Israel is a pariah with regard to nuclear weapons. Neither confirm nor deny. And the United States goes along with that in whatever diplomatic parlance of the day it assumes. But they're not an NPT member. They're not like Iran. They're not a safeguards and additional protocol adherer. They're not an NPT adherer. Iran has played the script exactly as it is supposed to be played all the way through the JCPOA. We kept recognizing that with them, and that was a confidence builder and a trust builder. Israel is not that. Israel is a criminal state. Let's face it, within the non-proliferation treaty regime and international law and all the guises that were created around that over time, Israel is a criminal state. Now, it's a criminal state also because it's committing genocide right now. It's even got, two of its members that are supposed to be dragged before the court, or three, maybe Netanyahu, Smotrich, and Ben Gvir, as I understand it, and a dead Hamas fighter. So Israel is a joke, a terrible, awful, sad joke when it comes to nuclear weapons. They should be stripped of them, and it should be the American empire that strips them of them. We gave them to them. Or they should be treated as the pariah they are. And no one should deal with them. No one should even talk with them diplomatically. No one should do business with them. And this genocide just reinforces that. So that's the nuclear situation. Who's the real problem in the Levant in terms of nuclear weapons? It ain't Iran. It's Israel. Now, to the other part of your question, I'd have to say this current conversation that I understand is taking place right now, with a 45-day ceasefire and 10 hostages to be picked by Hamas to come back, is probably a good deal and might just get this thing stopped, because in that 45 days, I give a 60-40 chance of Netanyahu being tossed out on his fat butt and put in jail. Okay, you look at what's happening there right now. Look at how many, every type of Israeli military veteran and active duty group has come out with a denunciatory letter. 8200 unit even came out with one. And he's busy calling these people traitors and wanting to kick them out of Israel. These are his core of his security state, calling him out. Many of them for his lack of caring for the hostages, but others for the conduct of the war too. He's in trouble. He's in deep trouble. Firing of the Shin Bet head didn't help him at all either. And there are groups every day in the streets protesting either for the hostage problem or some of the other things like destroying the judiciary or the Haredim or not serving, still not serving, and so forth. So Israel has got significant problems. Got significant problems with Erdogan now also, apparently. I don't know how those talks went between Bibi and Erdogan, but I dare say they probably are not going to find it a very easy thing to do to come to some kind of agreement on how each is going to carve up Syria. In fact, I'm not even sure Erdogan has that kind of intent, but I'm certain Bibi does. He killed a couple more Syrians yesterday. He's busy going about bombing whatever the hell he wants to bomb in Syria. So I think Israel is in deep trouble. I've been saying that all along, but I think I'm right. It's building, it's building, and building. Certainly, Bibi Netanyahu is in deep trouble. So what does that mean if they go into this ceasefire? Well, I've heard that Hamas has disapproved it. Just before we went on, I heard that they said they didn't like it. I don't know if that's the truth or not. But if it does, let's just say for a moment that it does go through. 45-day ceasefire. Israel never honors a ceasefire, but at least it will have to stop the major killing. It'll have to stop bombing hospitals, stop burying ambulances with dead people in it. And that will probably be a long enough time to get rid of Netanyahu. Then what happens? What happens then? What does Hamas do then? Once they've got him and hopefully people like Smotrich and Ben Gvir and they're like gone, who takes over? Is it a caretaker government? Probably. Do they have elections? How does it come about? And what does that mean for the war? Do the Houthis then back down like they did before? Not back down. They won't ever back down, but stop doing what they're doing in the Red Sea. That's what they did before. Because humanitarian, I saw too where the EU has voted 1.6 billion, I think, in rehabilitation and humanitarian aid. So we're getting to the point maybe where this is going to start to wind down. We're going to throw Netanyahu out. I hope they throw him in jail like they did Sharon. Sharon had cancer, I think, and died, so they gave him a break. But Bibi Netanyahu can stay in jail for the rest of his natural life, as far as I'm concerned. Be a good thing. So I don't know. I don't know where we're going, but I hope that there is some daylight opening up. If there isn't, I got to double down on my statement that Israel may take the United States with it in reputation and other forms of power, but Israel's going down. It's going down as a state. It will not be a state, and it will be irreparably so, I think, if this doesn't end very shortly, and it doesn't end more or less. I don't know how it can end positively because there's no positive aspect to it. But if it doesn't end quickly and abruptly even, and Netanyahu doesn't go, I mean, I don't think Israel will be around much longer if they don't.
What's going on between Iran and the United States, I think, could be part of a bigger picture of the Middle East. And because from the past and what we know from the past, the policy of the United States didn't benefit the United States. And
no, you're right. This could be a positive thing. I mean, it could be the ultimate, to put it in military terms, it could be the ultimate defeat of the empire. And I mean that. If Israel collapses, if Israel in some way is defeated, doesn't have to collapse, it's just defeated. It's sucking its hind toe for the next 10 years, trying to recover, because it's economically devastated too. Now, I didn't even mention the 8200 unit even signed a letter. Many of the members of that unit signed a letter. The whole fabric of Israeli society is in tatters. It's falling apart. The economy is falling apart. The reserve structure is falling apart. The whole system in Israel is collapsing. We don't have enough money. I'm sure we'll try, but we don't have enough money in this country. Even Miriam Adelson and all the rest of these jerks don't have enough money to bail Israel out of the crisis it's put itself in. Willingly, straightforwardly, on its own, put itself in. With the United States, of course, backing it up 100% in the killing and the genocide. And as I've said before, that's been our purpose. That's been our purpose. I listened to Jeffrey Sachs. I listened to him the other day, and I said, Jeffrey, it didn't start with Obama. He has some kind of fixation on the Obama administration. He wants to say that Obama did Timber Sycamore, the CIA operation, that Obama did this, Obama did that. Okay, I got my bones to pick with Obama too. We started it in the Bush administration. I was there, Jeffrey. I was there. We were fully intending to take down Saddam Hussein, march over into Syria if Bashar al-Assad didn't just collapse in agony when he saw Saddam Hussein fall so quickly. We were going to march over there and take him down. That was the plan. Then this insurgency developed. Why did Donald Rumsfeld tell everybody, don't talk about insurgency? I don't want to hear that word. He put that out in the Pentagon. I don't want to hear that word because it was foiling his plans. We were going to go ahead and take Syria down too. And then when it didn't happen, when we got buried in the insurgency in Iraq, we started covert operations. I shouldn't even say we started them. We just fired them back up again. And we were doing everything that Timber Sycamore, Jeffrey's start point, implied. we were trying to get rid of Assad from 2003 forward. So don't blame it all on Obama. That's all I'm asking. Obama had his crimes and ravages, but he wasn't the one who invented the problems in Syria with the U.S. We've been trying to do that all. We got it now. We've got it. We've got all these countries in chaos or gone in terms of the leaders we didn't like. And we'll never figure this out, Nima. People, leaders, do not necessarily make states what they are. In the case of Assad, you could say, yeah, he did for a long time, along with his father. He made Syria pretty much what it was. But there are a lot of people conniving with him in Syria. Quite a few people, even outside the Alawites, there were people conniving with him. So you've got a state there now that's okay. We're okay with it. It's falling apart. Turkey's doing a little bit. Israel's doing a lot. Now we want Iran. Then the vendetta will be complete. Then we will finish that strategy that we started with the clean break strategy. We started it. The Bush administration started it. Whether the president knew he was starting or not is another matter. Dick Cheney knew he was starting it. Now it's complete. Now we have total chaos in Southwest Asia. Or Donald Trump makes a deal with Iran, puts a stopper in that chaos, and does what I think Donald Trump wants to do in the wake of that happening, withdraws from the Middle East and goes back to, if he's smart, an offshore balancing strategy where we have naval forces, marine forces, naval means marine too. Got to say that to Americans though. And maybe a few reception places like in Kuwait. And that's it. I would even withdraw our fleet headquarters in Bahrain. I'd put everything back in Florida. I'd have all the trappings of U.S. military power that's on the ground in the Levant now gone. And I think that's what Donald Trump wants. I don't know if he wants it yet, but he's said indirect things about this enough to make me think he has intuited that it's not a good deal for the United States to be in the Middle East militarily. So we could, you're right. I think that was your implication. We could be starting something positive here, really positive. But the first thing we got to do is shut down Israel. Our attack dog. And we're the only ones who can do it.
And do you see that sort of potential in the Trump administration?
I think I see an inkling of it. I think I understand a little bit about the way he's thinking. And I may be grossly surprised. He's got to get away from a lot of billionaire money and things like that. And he's got to escape a really pernicious influence on this country, which right now, his minions and even he are aiding and abetting. The most serious thing he's aiding and abetting is the destruction of our Constitution with regard to freedom of speech. And he is overseeing that right now. I was really pleased to see Harvard tell him to go to hell about the money. I wish Columbia had. Columbia's not got quite the marvelous deep-pocketed endowment that Harvard does, but, thank Larry Summers for that. Rape, pillage, and plunder in Moscow, transfer the billions to Harvard, become president of Harvard. Hey, Larry Summers was onto something. But that's what he's doing right now, and maybe if he wants to do that, if he's that pernicious, he's going to succeed, and then I'll change my mind and say, you may have settled things in the Middle East, but you sure screwed them up in the empire's home because you've destroyed the Constitution, because that's what he's doing. And the tool he's using to do that, and this is what makes it so incredibly insidious. The tool he's using to do that is anti-Semitism. That's what he's using to destroy American universities. And I don't think he realizes what he's doing. If he does realize what he's doing and persists in it anyway, then he is truly an evil man, because that's worse than what is happening right now elsewhere, Ukraine, Gaza, and so forth, destroying our Constitution. I mean, that's suicide.
the negotiations between the United States and Iran. I want to know what's your take on the way that it seems that the outcome was positive on the part of Iranians and on the part of the Americans. But what's your take on that? How do you find it? Do you think that we're gonna have the same sort of negotiations as in Ukraine with Russia, or it's gonna be different? Different.
Nima, I wouldn't know. And I don't know what was discussed. But you have to understand, though, both sides would say it was positive, whether it was or not.
Yeah.
So we basically don't really have any information. It seems to me the question is, or one question is, whether Trump will introduce extraneous elements into the Iranian negotiations, like he has with the Ukrainian ones. You know, he introduced the element of the Ukrainian rare earths. And then just the other day, he said he wanted control of the pipeline that brings Russian gas through Ukraine to Europe. Well, why? What does this have to do with negotiating an end to the military conflict? So these kinds of extraneous elements which come in cloud the issues and become stumbling blocks, possibly. So I don't know if he's going to do the same thing to the Iranians. And I really don't know why Trump is bothering the Iranians. They haven't done anything. They've done nothing. The Israelis claim that the Iranians are going to make nuclear weapons. Well, the Israelis made nuclear weapons. Why does Trump think that Israel has the right to make nuclear weapons, but Iran doesn't? India made them, Pakistan made them, China, Russia. I mean, it's sort of silly to pick one country out and say, well, you can't make nuclear weapons. Well, the Iranians said they're not making them, they don't want to make them. They made an agreement some years ago with the United States that they would enrich uranium for nuclear power purposes and for medical purposes, but they would not take the enrichment up to the high levels necessary to make weapons. And as far as anyone knows, they've kept it. So it seems to me the solution, if there's any doubt, would be for the Iranians to say, all right, get your inspectors and come inspect. And that should be the end of it, right there. So what exactly are they negotiating? Are they negotiating Iran's willingness to accept international inspectors? Well, why should they have to negotiate it? So if Iran doesn't want the conflict and wants to make it more difficult for Israel to convince Trump to attack Iran, they should simply say, well, bring your inspectors and we'll show you what we're doing. And that would be the end. So I don't really understand the point of the whole thing. It seems to me to be excessive and with no real purpose, except to have the chance of fomenting more trouble. And if I was Iran, I'd be very cautious about dealing with an Israeli puppet, which is what the United States government is. It's a puppet of Israel. So why does Iran put its hands into its enemy's puppet's hands in negotiations? It's risky. Washington can make some claim, whether it's true or not. And no one's going to believe Iran. The media is so totally biased and unreliable. that you wouldn't be able to know. So the whole thing strikes me as highly risky for Iran. And I think it was a defective judgment for Iran to do that. They should have simply said, bring inspectors. No negotiations are necessary. Come look. So I think that situation can end up with lots of extraneous elements in it and has the potential to go very bad for Iran. And once again, what are we acting as Israel's agent for? Because that's really what's going on. President Trump, President of the United States, is acting as an agent of Netanyahu to deal with Iran, with whom Israel has an issue. Why is it our issue? It's not. It's not our issue. So once, at least in the case of Ukraine, we have the CIA's confession published in the New York Times that the war from day one was an American operated war. The Americans determined the battle strategy, what weapons were going to be used, what targets were going to be hit, where the Ukrainian troops were going to move. All of that it's an American war. So I can see why we have to negotiate the end of our war with Russia. That makes sense. But we're not at war with Iran. Israel wants us to be at war for them with Iran, but we don't have a dog in that fight. So it's nonsensical to me. Maybe it's just the bureaucracies, the arms control bureaucracies, they need something to do.
How do you see the case of Yemen? And the Trump administration has decided to fight Yemen. They said that it's this time going to be different from what we had before with the Biden administration. It didn't end well so far. And what do they want from Yemen? What can they achieve? The Yemenis were fighting the United States together with Saudi Arabia for a decade. What do they want right now, in your opinion? Is that all about Netanyahu again?
Yeah, what they want right now is for the Houthis in Yemen to stop attacking ships bound to Israel. They're not necessarily Israeli ships, but they're ships supplying Israel. And it's the Houthis' response to what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians. So it's a reaction of the Houthis in Yemen to Israel. If Israel wasn't doing what they're doing to the Palestinians, the Houthis wouldn't be doing anything. So it's the only Arab response to Israel's genocide of the Palestinians. All the other Arab countries are quite satisfied not to do anything, maybe say a few words here and there, but they're not going to do anything. So it's these are the only Arabs that have any fighting spirit and any moral conscience and any feelings of compassion for the Palestinians. The rest of the Arabs seem to be on Israel's side. So possibly, just bought off by us or the Israelis or both. So that's that situation. Now, if that Trump is going to invade Yemen, he's starting another war. If I was Trump, I would kind of be ashamed because it makes him look like a puppet. It makes him look like Netanyahu's puppet. He's running around doing everything Israel wants him to do. Well, he's supposed to be renewing America. He's supposed to be making America great again. He's not supposed to be making greater Israel for Israel. So, I don't know why Trump isn't embarrassed. I would be ashamed to be seen as a puppet for the vile, dirty Netanyahu, a mass murderer, a guy under criminal indictment? I mean, why does the President of the United States want to be associated with that? In my opinion, it hurts the reputation of all Americans. And it makes no sense. I can't explain it. I would never do anything like that. I can't imagine Ronald Reagan doing anything like that. So why does Trump do it? And particularly if it's going to lead to more violence in an area that he has said he's going to end the violence. So, how do you make sense of it? Yes. I don't think you can.